Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Retro Bliss. You're on the Retro Bliss Rewind podcast. Welcome. For those of you who are watching over from Mike's Gaming Gala, we simulcast over there as well. We're going to have an interesting and fun show tonight. We're going to be talking with Jordan Love of the Atari Hotels. Now, we talked briefly about the Atari Hotels on last week's podcast, and Jordan's team found out about it and contacted us and wanted to talk about it. And so we were more than happy to have Jordan come on. So without further delay, let's bring in our panelists. First, Mike for Mike's Gaming Gala.
Jordan Love.
I'm sorry. That's
Jordan
the
Taylor.
quarterback for the. That's the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. Sorry, Brian from BD Retro Mods, and then I'm so sorry, Jordan Taylor. I am so sorry, Jordan.
Hey, by the way, at the risk of offending some people that are on the live with us, I do actually like the Packers. So that was serendipity, is what that was. I'm thrilled to be called Jordan Love. You can call me that anytime. So I appreciate it.
Well, I'll tell you this right now: don't have him as a fantasy quarterback because he's not going to do much for you. Anyway, at least he didn't this past year. It's like,
that's a different show. That's a different, yeah.
So Jordan Taylor, I am so sorry. All right, Jordan, we are glad to have you. Thank you for reaching out to us. There are a lot of people who have a lot of questions about this, and a lot of people that are actually skeptical about this. So what we're going to do is we're going to let you explain to us what the Atari Hotels, what it is. And then we kind of go from there, okay? Because I have questions. We all have questions. So go ahead and explain to us.
Phil.
Oh, I'm sorry. We also have
3 times about this pre-show. First, let's address the chat. So I have no doubt that there's going to be lots of people in the chat that have questions. We're going to kind of do our interview, let Jordan talk, let Jordan do his thing. But any questions that are in the chat, I will star them, and I promise we will come to them later. We aren't ignoring you.
Yeah,
and I do see the Jordan fan club. I'll be bringing up the comments as we talk. But,
all right,
fan club's in the chat. So
right.
Yes, first things first. Why don't you tell us, explain kind of distinctly what this project is? What is the Atari Hotels project?
Well, just real quick, I do have 5 kids, and I teed them up to be the Jordan Taylor fan club. So, I'm already happy about that. But well, first of all, before I jump into that, thank you for having me. Appreciate we chuckled about it a little bit pre-show. You had talked about Atari Hotels, last week on the live, and somebody sent me the video, and I'm like, well, let's talk. I'd love to talk. So we, obviously coordinated. I guess it was 2 weeks ago, I believe, is when you talked about it. But appreciate you having me on. Really excited to be here. And look, from our perspective, we've been working on this project, on the Atari project, for quite some time. Those who have been paying attention, which I'm assuming most of the people in this live and in the chat, paid attention back in 2020 when this idea sort of first, came to the public purview. And so, without getting into all the back and forth of the history, which we can certainly do, if there's some questions around that, happy to do that. I can tell you from a where we are today perspective, and what is the Atari Hotel, what is this project? I think one of the simplest ways for me to describe it is really to kind of walk you through, what I'll call the uses of the space and how it breaks down, the site that it's on, et cetera. And so I'll do that kind of in a condensed way, and then, certainly can field follow-ups from there. But, long and the short of it is we acquired back in December of 2023. So we actually bought this land over 2 years ago now. The reason we didn't come forward with the project publicly until recently is because when we acquired the land, the seller of the land, a large public company based on the East Coast, they actually leased it back from us for about 21 months up until October of this past year. And so that was sort of the trigger point for us, and all the work we've been doing behind the scenes architecturally and site development wise and due diligence and all the things you do with any real estate project. That became sort of our ability, that in combination with, of course, having this Reg A crowdfunding round, which we'll talk about, and having the SEC qualification around that, that triggered it. And so what we've designed, and more of this will become much clearer as we release more renderings, more floor plans, all the things that you would expect to see. We've designed a property that is, I'm a math guy, so I always talk about things in sort of percentages. It's really 80% public facing and about 20% hotel. So when this idea first came out, it was very much kind of a nostalgic, boutique-y, very hotel first, type concept. And that's really evolved for us over the last several years, working behind the scenes, going through trials and errors of what should this be, what could this be, getting feedback from people of really all demographics. And so what we've landed on is really an entertainment property, right? So we have a 2,200 person venue on the ground floor. That's sort of the main feature of the public facing side. That'll be, gaming, small gaming conventions, esports competitions, live music, corporate events, game releases, kind of all things gaming, culture, content creation, and music. So sort of a multi-purpose type component to the property with certainly gaming at its core. Adjacent to that, we have a large kind of a sports viewing and a video game viewing area where people can hang out, if they bet on sports, that's their thing. Great. I think our view is at some point, in our lifetime, certainly, betting on gaming will become much more prevalent in the US. It's very prevalent already in other parts of the world. And so that's certainly an element that will evolve over time. So the first level really has kind of two sides to it. And it has a digital corridor that runs right through the middle that actually takes you from Roosevelt Street, which is the main kind of east-west thoroughfare of the neighborhood, down along this alley that has multiple bars and restaurants on the other side of the property as well. So it's almost like a digital to analog type experience on that ground floor. As you move up the property, the second and third level, about 80,000 square feet total between those two levels. That's your food and beverage, your retail, your immersive sort of entertainment, sort of ticketed based experience, kind of all things gaming, all the way from the retro side all the way to kind of where gaming is going and will continue to go over time. And so there's a huge amount of that. A lot of the food and beverage will be very simple, sort of like convenient. Other elements of the food and beverage will have a more kind of experiential or emotional component to it. And so we'll be utilizing, partners in that regard, both from a technology perspective, also from an operator perspective, to bring some of those concepts to life. And then really, as you move up the property from there, the hotel tower sits on top of those three main levels. So you have these kind of three main public facing levels that do make up about, as I said before, about 80% of the square footage. And then you have the hotel components on top. The hotel itself is actually kind of small relative to what you typically would see in a hotel development. It's 91 keys, 91 rooms. That was a playoff of the 1972, the year Atari was started, of course. So we have 19 suites, 72 standard rooms. The 19 suites will be really unique in that we'll actually have collaborations with other content creators, other gamers, other publishers, other brands that will actually have unique designs in those suites. So fans of other games, other platforms, other things other than just Atari will also be able to participate in that context. And then the last thing I'll point out, and you can always tell me I'm being too long-winded because it is a fault of mine. As we move up to the top floor, we have a full floor penthouse suite with a private pool. It will be available to rent at times, but the primary use of that penthouse suite is actually for a residency program. And so we're going to have different influencers, different gamers, different people that have their own followings, kind of like Vegas has done with musicians over the years. We'll have people be able to come in, stay in this property, have privacy, have their own sort of really unique experience in this penthouse suite, and then do live meet and greets with their fans, do events at the venue, film content from the from the property as well, which we love that sort of collaborative type approach. So hopefully that gives you at least the on a real estate side of things, kind of how things lay out.
That's very interesting. Now, why
it's an event
Phoenix?
Venue first, is what you're saying.
Well, it's a big part of it. I mean, that's a big part of it. But you also have on floors 2 and 3, you have a combination of kind of entertainment driven
Retail,
uses,
yeah.
retail, food and beverage, all those types of things as well, pop-ups, all the things you'd expect in an entertainment property. But we view this property not just as a place for people from Cincinnati to come out and participate, which of course that's great. But we also view it as a local asset. We'll talk about our kind of development history as well as we go along here. But we're heavily invested in Phoenix for a whole bunch of reasons. It's a market we really believe in. We want the community to be able to participate in this hotel, not just from a stay at the hotel kind of perspective. And so we love the idea of the local crowd also having a big role in bringing this together.
Well, that kind of explains that. So, but if a person like me from Cincinnati, what other than the hotel would draw me there? Would you just be expecting people like me who happen to be coming or wanting to come specifically for the hotel to be there? I mean, I don't understand. That's what I'm a little concerned about.
Yeah, so look, there will be a series of ongoing events all throughout the year. Like we anticipate 250-ish nights a year of different live programming that's happening, at the venue itself, right? So a 2,200 person venue, if you think about that in like a music context, you're not going to draw the Post Malones of the world, but you're going to draw that sort of second tier of musician. And we have a music partner that we'll be announcing soon that will do a lot of that programming. So if you're a music fan, that might be a reason to come to the property because you're following that musician. If you're a fan of a certain sort of content creator or gaming influencer, etc., you may come to the property to stay there because you want to see them, meet them, and experience kind of being on site with them as well. And if you're a local, like you have one analogy I would give, if you're familiar with a property in Vegas called Area 15. They brought the Meow Wolf brand out to that property. They have all these other different types of, different types of activities that people do, both coming in from out of town that the locals do as well. And so there'll always be different things for people to enjoy. Our goal as this comes to life, our goal is if somebody comes out to Phoenix for the weekend to come to the Atari property, is that they will be on property, as much as possible, right? For all the reasons you would expect when you're developing something. And so we'll not only have sort of those static experiences and those event-based experiences, but also leveraging technology and how that evolves over the next several years to create the ability for someone to come out in September and have a unique experience or go through the property and sort of have their own sort of version of what they did that time. And then come back in December and there's some new components and new experiences in the property that are really driven by, just the evolution of technology, digital mapping, AI, all the things you would expect. And so it is really an entertainment first type approach. And yes, the rooms will be, awesome. They'll have all the machines, the consoles. They'll have, different things you can do within the rooms. Of course, Atari being, the primary driver of a lot of that. But we will have other gaming, consoles and different things that people can play in the rooms, PC gaming, all that kind of stuff, right? So there is some of it that, here's what I will say. This is a candid answer. In the real estate business, one of the primary things you try to do is define everything by the time you actually break ground, right? I know exactly what this is going to be. I know what, this square foot is going to be that, and this room is going to be this. That's true for us in part, but we have to be a little bit careful because where gaming is going to be, where technology is going to be by the time we open our doors in 3 years, it's just not going to be the same as it is today, right? And so we have to have the right tech infrastructure to be adaptable to that evolution, and have the right canvases to use and adapt as we go along.
Interesting. So now Atari they've been riding a wave for a long time of nostalgia. That's what they sell. They sell nostalgia because people like me who grew up with the 2600, 5200, 7800, and so on, those are our memories of Atari, and Atari is obviously a shadow of their former self, but that's what they've done. So you're saying that I could experience nostalgia there, but I could also, if I was a modern gamer, that would also be something that might appeal to me there as well.
Yeah. So of course, we all know Atari being, what it is. The history there is just, unmatched in so many ways. And yes, there's been ups and downs and roller coasters and everything else. And um, we love the Atari legacy. We love the nostalgia. We love the brand. I mean, they have a slogan at Atari. It's, and I'm sure you're familiar with it on some level. Futuristic since forever, right? Like they've always sort of stayed relevant in some ways, and that's been up and down. We love what they're doing today. We love they're producing new games. They're turbocharging their existing portfolio. They're collaborating with brands like Pac-Man and Mortal Kombat. They're doing some really cool stuff. But to your point, Phil, it is a retro gaming sort of focus, right? What we sort of have found is, and if you kind of look at the design and a lot of the renderings that are out there publicly, it's very much the Blade Runner version or the Ready Player One version of Atari, right? It's sort of that futurism, that kind of unknown, that very cyberpunk sort of, type inspiration. And what we found with a lot of the younger generation, and I kind of fall right in the middle. I'm 42, just again, full transparency. So I came up playing, right on the tail end of when Atari was sort of falling off, and there were still consoles out, and I still played it. But most of my core memories as a child were playing Nintendo and Super Nintendo, right? And so then you've gotten into the newer generation who have been around gaming in their whole lives in different capacities. And what we've found with that generation, based on me having kids, but also the 20-somethings, etc., is it's about the experiences, about the friendships. Like my son, who's 15, he plays several of the online games, and he has his friend group at school. He has his friend groups that he games with, right? And so you have these. We're now creating a place where friend groups and families can come together of all generations and really experience a place that's all around gaming culture, not just the nostalgia of it. Yes, there'll be elements of that, but a place for gaming and that sort of ecosystem and all covering multiple generations to really interact together.
Okay. There's a gentleman who's in the chat right now I've got to address. He goes by the name of Keo Daikin, and he was out at the Consumer Retro or the Consumer Electronics Show. Anyway, he initially talked to somebody there about the hotel, and that was, I believe, why we talked about this initially on the show. So first of all, thank you, Keo, for doing that. And I don't know if you came in late or not, but Jordan, his team reached out to us to come on the show to talk about this. So we appreciate you bringing it up, and we appreciate Jordan being here. So
I do want, if I could, Phil, real quick, I want to give a shout out to Keo. So when I went and watched, if I remember this correctly, when I went and watched the conversation that you guys all had a couple weeks ago, I think he was in on that conversation. I don't think he was on camera, but I think he was on audio. And Keo actually reached out to me personally about a week ago. I had assumed that he was going to be on this with all of us. And so, Keo, I am sorry for not getting back to you. I had incorrectly, obviously, assumed that you would be part of this conversation. So I'm so sorry about that.
Well, it's my show. I can do what I want. Keo, if you want to be on, man, I can send you a link. But right now, we're just kind of listening to Jordan more than anything. Anyway, so.
I didn't mean to derail it. I'm sorry.
While you send Keo a link, I would like to ask. So I'm going to share the website here. Now, is it my understanding that you guys do actually have architectural drawings? You do have a completed plan, and if so, is this a representation of that plan?
It's a gamified version of that plan, but yes, the short answer is yes. So one of the things that we found when we acquired the site, if you were to look at an aerial view of this site, it's a very odd shape. It's not a square, it's not a rectangle, it's not even like a shape that's defined. It's like all these parcels that were mashed together. And so we had to do a lot of work in test fitting. How do we build on this site with all the different sort of components, not just of a shape perspective, but the city of Phoenix and the code and all the normal stuff you go through. And so the design that you see here, and this one's a little bit, again, more sort of like It's got, its own kind of gamification going on in the website, etc. But the fundamental shape of the building and some of the other renderings that are out there, both from the aerial views, the views from Roosevelt Street, etc., those are architectural renderings of the actual building that we've designed that I described earlier. And so one of the things that's going to happen over the next handful of weeks is we're going to have a series of additional renderings that we're going to be releasing as we continue to make progress from an architectural perspective. So yes, the short answer is yes. That was a little bit of a long-winded answer. I know there's been some confusion out there because we did have a video that came out, which, I'm happy to talk about that as part of this conversation as well. That maybe gave some people the impression that everything that we did was all just digitally, created, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just not the case.
Why don't we talk about that then? You guys released a video. I presume AI generated elements in there. It showed a lot of different kind of buildings. I know that Atari Hotels, and we'll move on to the Vegas thing in a bit. Why don't you tell us a little the mindset behind that? And obviously the community reaction to it was not the best.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's just, you called it for what it is. I mean, ultimately sort of what happened there was we got qualification from the SEC, and you have to go live within 48 hours once you have that qualification. And we weren't quite ready with some of the other production work that we were doing from a video perspective. And again, candidly, like, our goal with that video was, hey, we have all these renderings. We've done a ton of work from a real estate perspective. How do we do something that at least presents sort of the energy and the vibe of what we're sort of announcing based on that, that timeline? And we listened to the community, we got the feedback, and we acted accordingly, right? Like, it just wasn't sort of the right fit for kind of that first step out. And, in hindsight, we can't change it now, but it is what it is. And so for us moving forward, what you're really going to see is, and there's some of it that's already out there. Like, we have an updated video out that was produced that's a bit more narrative driven and human driven. But you're going to see from us a lot more of the tactical, the tangible, a lot of the actual stuff that we're working on that we've, blood, sweat, and tears for years now, and that we're very excited to show. But that video by itself, kind of in the silo of when it came out and the unknowns and launching a reggae simultaneously, we heard the reaction loud and clear and understand it.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, when it comes to the retro community, especially, I imagine a lot of communities, but you almost have to treat them like a domestic abuse victim, because we have had so many different projects over the years that have legitimately had people with like 40 years experience, well-known industry professionals heading them. And they come out and you're like, this isn't going to be crowdfunded. And then they start crowdfunding, and then things so many different projects that have gone like that. I'm not sure if you're familiar at all with the Intellivision Amico, but that's probably the most notorious one, at least right now. And so when you mention crowdfunding or investing, or however you want to, like, we'll get to that part of it later, and then you release a video that has a bunch of AI in it, and like you said, nothing that really feels tangible. Like, if I saw blueprints, if I saw plans, if I saw the permits, if I saw all that stuff, I'd feel better. But when you combine that with and you can be an owner, 75% of the community right now, like, immediately goes, oh no, this again.
Yeah, look, I don't have any real pushback on that at all. I mean, we, as you would expect, there was a lot of great positive feedback around it as well. But certainly as an aggregate and as a whole, it's something that we would have done differently if we could. So it is what it is, and we're moving forward, and nothing's changed. We're still very excited about where we're at, and I have no other real way to explain it other than that.
Yep, fair enough. Why don't you tell us a bit about what happened? Because last week, I believe, it was announced that the Vegas location was canceled. And this, like, because Atari Hotels was planned as, like Phoenix is your home base, you're starting or whatever, and then you're hoping, or we'll see, maybe expanding this concept to other locations. And we had actually talked about, if you were going to build a home base somewhere that this could be potentially successful, in our opinions. I mean, none of us are business people, and I should say to anybody watching, nothing on the Retro Bliss Rewind podcast is financial advice, investing advice, anything. We're just middle-aged guys that like playing video games. But we thought, like, if it was already in somewhere that was already a tourist destination, like Vegas, like New York, I understand the real estate prices there are stupid, but it's somewhere where you might get a more casual group, whereas it sounds like you're trying to build this as more of a tourist destination for Phoenix, to draw events and potentially people like that. But what was the story behind the Vegas location?
Yeah, so we spent late 2020, kind of into 2021. We spent a lot of time in Vegas. We were approached by a series of landowners, off strip, on strip. We actually talked to some of the biggest brands in Vegas about potentially being a hotel within a hotel kind of concept. There were a lot of things that were happening very quickly, in that timeline. And, we just flat out, we have pursued a specific deal that we narrowed it down to. At the end, right at the finish line, we actually had a large South American developer come in, and this is all public record. If you really want to dig it up, you can find it. But we had a large developer come in and actually outbid us on the site that we were pursuing in Vegas. And so after that happened, we had invested and for us, like, we're a small to medium sized development company. We're not endless pockets, and we can't pursue stuff left and right and have sunk costs and all the things. And so what that really did allow us to do is really reflect on, where can we be most successful and what makes the most sense for us to bring this project to life. And Phoenix, a lot of, and Phil touched on it pre-show a little bit, like, haven't been there many times, whatever the sort of context was. Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the country. It's Maricopa County, which is where Phoenix and all the suburban areas sit, is the fastest growing, or one of the fastest growing counties every single year. There's been a mass amount of people that have moved in from California, from the Midwest, places like Chicago. So Phoenix is growing faster than it ever has. And, with our background, of course, having done as many projects as we have in kind of the greater downtown Phoenix area, Roosevelt Row specifically, we felt really good about bringing this project to life in our own backyard, in a market that we know, that we understand the metrics really, really well. The barriers to entry are just very different than trying to launch a new concept on the Strip or even off the Strip in Las Vegas. That's a ultra competitive market, in some ways the most competitive market in the world. And for us to really get this accomplished and make real progress, we came back to, hey, we know how to build in Phoenix. We've done it before. We've done it many times. We know the neighborhood in the area is only growing from where it's been, for the last 5-10 years. Let's do this in a place where it makes sense. And so that's kind of my full circle, component to Vegas. But just to be clear on Vegas, we are no longer pursuing the project in Vegas that we were pursuing prior, that was announced. However, we are not saying that we're never going to go to Vegas. That we're not saying Vegas is off the table. It's never going to happen. It's just right now, Phoenix is our priority. And that's where we're focusing both our financial resources and our time and energy in bringing this to life in Phoenix.
And I mean, you make a really good point with, that it's actually might be a good time to transition to the achievements of intersection developments. You guys have done a lot of stuff in Phoenix. And that's, and I'll get you to talk about these in a sec, but I think, sticking to what you know is probably a pretty good idea. And we do have people in the chat saying, you know, we do visit Phoenix, and damn Mike, Phoenix does get tourism. So fair enough. Yes, I mean, yes, we know Phoenix is a good city. I'm not saying it isn't. Um, but you've got all these. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Intersection Developments, which is the company you. So another thing that maybe some people might not be clear on is this is not Atari. You have licensed the Atari name for Atari Hotels.
That is correct. Yeah, we should be, and I should be very clear about that in every conversation. I do not represent Atari. And everything that we're doing on this project, to your point, Mike, is a license. It's a license from Atari, and so we're obviously working closely with them, and they're very involved in a lot of the aspects of the things that we can and can't do, right? As you would expect in any licensing relationship. But this is not Atari. You know, to the extent someone considers making an investment in our securities offering, that is not an investment in Atari. That is an investment in the Phoenix project. So disclaimer, right? I mean, I just want to be clear about that. But in to your question, I mean, we've developed 350 million approximately, and several of those projects that you see kind of displayed here on the screen. The bulk of our work over the last 8 or 9 years has been in the Roosevelt Row Arts District in Phoenix. And so if you know the landscape of Phoenix, I'll do a quick rundown for those who don't. The downtown core of Phoenix is where you have like the Phoenix Suns Arena, the Diamondback Stadium, the big convention center, several of the music venues. That's your downtown core. A lot of office product, a lot of law firms and such. As you move a couple blocks to the north of that, you have a massive Arizona State University campus that is now approaching 20,000 students. So ASU is one of the largest universities in the country now. Their main campus is actually in Tempe. It's a suburb of Phoenix, but their second largest campus is in downtown. And then Roosevelt Row sits adjacent to that. And so if you kind of think about it from a real estate perspective, you're at a Suns game, you walk 5 minutes, you're at ASU, you walk another 5 minutes, you're now in this Roosevelt Row Arts and Entertainment District. And so we kind of took the approach, 8 or 9 years ago, as these things are starting to happen from a growth perspective in Phoenix, as we're seeing the population trend, some of the stuff I touched on before, but also just looking from an urbanism perspective. And Phoenix has historically been this very spread out, kind of suburban sprawl, for lack of a better term. And a lot of the nightlife and such happened primarily out in Scottsdale. With ASU sort of investing the money they did, the city of Phoenix, other private developers, etc., we began working, on Roosevelt Row and really partnering with a lot of the local companies that have been there before us, and thinking about historic buildings and how can those be repurposed in a brand new way. How do we take vacant lots or old beat up parking lots and turn those into new things, right? And so we've been very active in this neighborhood for that time, and have done again the things you see there. And what's really kind of a full circle moment for us is not just the Atari kind of refocusing back in Arizona, but also that we were able to acquire this site where Atari is being built. It's 46,000 plus square feet. That site has not been available for sale for over 30 years. It was owned by different variations of radio station companies, publicly traded mergers, acquisitions. It changed hands a few times, but it's always been a radio station. Everyone calls it the radio station building that sits on on a portion of the site. And the only reason we were even able to get a seat at the table to eventually acquire this property in the end of 2023 is we had bought everything else around it. And so it was kind of like, hey, look, all these other sites are amazing, and we can do things with these, and we love sort of the older buildings and adding new restaurants and building new high-rise, etc. And if there's a chance someday that maybe this gets us a foot in the door of actually acquiring this other site, that would be the frosting on the cake. And thankfully, there's a whole longer story there we don't have to get into, but we're very fortunate to get that deal done at the end of December of 23, and then the seller just moved out in October, which is why we're now live, as I spoke to before. I can't remember if I said that on the pre-show or during this, so sorry if that was redundant. But But yeah, really amazing. It's truly the main intersection of the whole neighborhood. Roosevelt Row, Roosevelt Street is your main east and west thoroughfare through the neighborhood. Central Avenue is your main north and south thoroughfare through Phoenix. And this literally sits at Central and Roosevelt on the hard corner, right across from a light rail stop, walkable to 50, 75 bars and restaurants. I mean, from a real estate perspective, it doesn't get any better.
It's a good hub. And so to be clear, you own the property.
We own the property. That is correct.
Yeah. So I have a question about, you had mentioned that the suites you plan on being themed based. And so one thing that made me think, Atari's kind of quick to sell or let people use their name IPs. And so, but if your rooms are going to be theme based on other things other than Atari, do you foresee a problem getting the IPs for the other rooms that you may be, you might want like an Xbox room? Okay, Microsoft, you're gonna have to deal with them. A Nintendo room, you're gonna have to deal with them, and they're very hard to deal with. What is your plan on that?
Yeah, so I do want to push back a little bit on one comment you made about Atari. I would agree with you that Atari for a long time did license out their IP very loosely and to many different people. With the new leadership that's in place, with Wade having taken over and obviously Fred no longer there, that has changed pretty dramatically. Atari's not licensing out their IP kind of like they were historically, right? So just kind of my perspective on that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, your question though on the rooms themselves. So I'll give you an example of one of the things we're going to announce. There's a large content creator, who's one of the top streamers in the world. He is going to be launching a suite design competition with his fans. And so we're working directly with the creator and his audience to create a unique experience for him and his audience in the property. What we're not planning to do is go to Nintendo and say, hey, can we do a Mario suite? Like, that's not what we're doing. It's more about the individuals and brand collaborations and the fan involvement in that design process and in that interaction, more so than it is like, oh, this is going to be the Pac-Man one, and then we're going to have the Centipede one. I mean, we'll have a few Atari ones for sure, because we do have the ability to use like the full library, not just the Atari kind of name and logo, but much more of that collaborative type process than it is a more and more licensing deals, if that makes sense.
Okay, that clarifies that. Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, going back to this, so you did mention, so these projects here, I haven't gone through every single one of them, but I went through several. Are these all new construction? Are some of them like renovations or additions? What kind of projects are these? I'm just trying to get down to, what Intersection Developments actually has done with these, because not all of them are, when you click on this, it's like, okay, the restaurant, the bar, is that a modification or a renovation to an existing building, or built from the ground up kind of thing?
So the simple answer, and I'll expand on this, I'll be a little tongue in cheek for a second. The answer is yes. So it's really it really does depend. So there are several of them where we've come in and said, hey, we want to honor the character of an existing building. That building may be historic, it may not be historic. We want to honor sort of the history and the character of that building and reimagine it, re-envision it in a new way. As you're seeing here, a lot of that, certainly in this neighborhood, has been trending more toward public-facing uses, right? So these older buildings that have maybe been like law offices and nobody ever has stepped inside of these buildings. Like, this is a great example. So 214 East Roosevelt, it's a 15,000 square foot building. It was built in the 40s and 50s in two phases. It historically was a warehouse way back. And then it evolved in the 90s and 2000s into a large photography studio with a tiny little coffee shop in the front. And then it evolved multiple more times. And when we came in and acquired it, we worked with several local partners to kind of envision this building sort of into the future, right? How do we take these bow truss ceilings and this amazing architecture that's in place and think about the uses that the public would want? And so we added multiple restaurants. We added an additional office component. There's an art gallery and an event space. So that was an existing building and still sits there today. If you're in the neighborhood, you can visit any one of these. The times where we build new are when we're coming in and we're acquiring a vacant lot altogether. That's just a dirt lot that someone's just been sitting on for, in some cases, decades, and we're building something from the ground up, or we're acquiring a surface parking lot and building something from the ground up, but incorporating parking into that development to replace the parking that we're now taking, right? And so we've done kind of everything across the board in this neighborhood, and that's a project right there that literally will break ground in about 45 days. That's a $50 million development that's multifamily, but also has office and restaurant and 3 levels of parking, right? And so it really is a blend of all of the above.
Interesting.
Okay. And probably help to bridge to the next big topic. How were these financed? Are these do you finance these, or are these partners, or are you commissioned?
I'm gonna nerd out a little bit. I will apologize to you and the audience. I actually am a CPA by background, so not always the greatest sort of selling point, but that's just who I am. That's my DNA. I'm a very numbers driven guy. So every deal that we do, every project that we do, we set up it's a special purpose vehicle investment. And so every single project we've done that you showed on the screen, we set up a capital structure for each of those, in which a lot of our projects have the same investors because they've invested with us in several projects over the years. In some cases, every one of them. Myself and my partners always have at least 10% of the money in any deal as our personal money. So that's sort of our, and oftentimes it's more, sometimes it's 20%. So we're always personally invested. And then we have a series of private investors that we work closely with on every project that we do. This one's unique in that one, it is larger. I mean, it's a lot of our projects have not been this big historically, although we've been involved in bigger projects. This is a big project for us, just to be transparent. $124 million is not a small amount of money for most people, I would argue. But no, all joking aside, we have the $14.5 million that we've already invested is a combination of our own personal money and a series of our investors that have come in, acquired the land, started working on the pre-development costs, etc. Obviously, the Reg A is another component of the capital that will participate in the ownership, just like right next to us, no different. That's a pari passu investment next to all the original investors, including myself. And then depending upon where the Reg A lands and how much money we ultimately raise from that offering, then we'll supplement the rest of the equity with more of those private investors and/or a couple of the families that we work with on the family office side, right? So we'll see how things play out. We have until December of this year. The way that the raise is set up is once you get qualified with the SEC, you get a 12-month clock. And we got qualified in mid-December, December 18th, I believe it was. And so we have until, call it December 18th of 2026 for this offering to be available for people to invest. And we'll ultimately get the feedback and we'll see where we end up when all is said and done on this. There are several protections in there for investors. I'm happy to get into if we want to talk about that now. We can do it later. But we did set this up in a way where those investors that are coming in with $500 or $2,500 or whatever, there are protections. One, because the SEC asks for that, because this took us a year and a half to get approved, just for the record. It wasn't a 3-month kind of figure it out. We went through multiple audits back and forth with the SEC a dozen times. It's a process. And it's meant to be that way so that people, when they do invest, unlike a Reg CF, which is a little more loosey-goosey, a Reg A is far more protective toward investors to ensure their money is not being, used in ways it shouldn't.
That Actually, you know what? I have absolutely no problem with you nerding out with numbers. My dad's a CMA, so it's one of those and also like if you're asking for money in this project, and we might as well move on to that. I imagine anybody serious about potentially sending money your way and investing in this project is going to want to hear all of that nerd stuff. Um, so I'm going to share this tab here. This is the overview here. You're projecting the project would cost 124 million. You have a Reg A to raise 40 million. I've heard everything from you guys are looking to raise 8 or 9 million to the 40 million. Why don't you explain to us and to the chat what the goal of this fundraising is right now and the protections, explain what Reg A is. I am happy to sit and hear you nerd about numbers for half an hour. I have no problem with that.
I don't know if that's the consensus of the group or not, Mike, but I'll take that.
I think that's the responsible thing for us to do.
Yeah, no, look, I'm happy to do it. I mean, it's important. I mean, it's truly the nuts and bolts and the actual data behind how this works, right? And so, just to nerd out a little bit, and for those who do care about this stuff, I would encourage you to go back and listen to it again because I'll be very clear. But there's going to be a lot of numbers thrown out here. So let me talk about a Reg A plus just for a second. I touched on it before. Multiple audits back and forth to the SEC. You have to get qualified. There's all those sort of precursors to actually being able to launch this and go out and say, hey, we're raising money, right? So that's sort of the overarching theme of how that works. The other stipulation of the Reg A is you cannot raise more than $75 million on a single offering under this criterion, under this sort of process. So the maximum amount of money by law that we could ever take in is $75 million. That is just the hard cap to how this works, right? So that's sort of a broader overview of how the Reg A works. When you get specifically down into our deal, the $40 million number, that is the amount of equity based on what's already been invested, the 14, right? 14 plus. That plus the 40 million, when you marry those two numbers with a construction loan facility, which is a very typical sort of component of any real estate development project, right? Because then you're only paying on that money as you draw it. Whereas when people invest, as soon as that money's in, it starts to accrue a return, right? And so you typically use a leverage component to build a construction loan, for lack of a better term. And so that delta between the equity that goes in and that construction loan will get us to the $124 million to build the entire project, right? So that's why that $40 million number exists. The other number you referred to was 8 or 9 or whatever it was. I almost did a 6, 7 things. My kids are going to kill me for that, but I'm not supposed to say that anymore, but I still think it's funny.
My daughter thinks it's hilarious. So
I've been told it's like the older people are doing it now, but whatever. Who knows? So there's an $8.668 million number that exists in this specific offering, and this is unique to us. The reason why that exists is because the way we structured this deal is the Regulation A investor pool has to become the majority interest holder in the physical assets themselves, inclusive of the land, the license with Atari, everything specifics to this project, until that money can actually be accessed by us to invest into the project. And so in a world where we raise $5 million, as an example, that we'll never touch that money. It'll sit in escrow. It'll be returned to the Regulation A investors. In a world where we raise 20, that money would come over. That group would now own this project in a majority sense, and we would then supplement that equity with some of our additional private investors, et cetera, which I touched on before, to get us where we need to be to get over the hump. And so the biggest sort of protection that, and I should also add, there's also, if you go, and maybe someone will do this, and I'm sure a few people have, our offering documents with the SEC are literally 100 plus pages. Everything that we've budgeted out as far as how money will be allocated, what it goes toward, etc., has been reviewed by the SEC, and we have to adhere to that budget as we move forward. Like I can't decide, 6 months from now, I'm going to do a different project, and we're just going to use this money that we got, and we're going to throw a slap Atari on it and do whatever. We have a very strict sort of set of rules that we have to follow based on the SEC oversight to adhere to that, sort of budget and that structure that we've put together, right? So I'm going to pause there. I know I got into the weeds pretty heavy there for a minute, but happy to answer follow-up questions to that.
Speaking of which, if someone were interested in investing in this, but they had questions, first of all, where can they go to ask the question, and then where can they go to actually do the investing? I know Mike's already here, but can you let us know?
Yeah, so there's two pages. There's the main Atari site that Mike had up earlier that has like the visual side, the gamification, etc. You can see the contact button up there. That's a simple way for someone to reach out to us. The Become an Owner button takes you to the actual investment page. It's simply invest.atarihotels.com. Within that, we do have a chat bot, kind of the normal stuff. There's also a form that people can fill out to actually, reach out to us and ask questions through this website as well. So we've created sort of multiple avenues for people to reach out and ask questions. If somebody says, hey, I read the FAQ, I'm excited about this project, I'd love to be involved. The process of investing is very, very simple. You click on the Become an Owner tab that you see up at the top there. There's an input form you have to go through, and just like any investment you would make anywhere, you have to go through filling out the appropriate information. They validate your identity, all the normal stuff you would expect. Very, very simple. But as far as people getting in contact with us, there's multiple avenues to do that on both sites.
Very good.
Keo's entered the chat.
Yeah,
How's it
Keo
going,
made
Keo?
it.
Hey, how's it
Keo.
going, everyone? I'm just sitting here enjoying everything and listening.
Well, since you've been listening, do you have any specific questions that you would like to ask Jordan?
As well as Brian, who we have kept silent.
Yeah, he hasn't been able to get a word in edgewise because of us.
I had specifically said, I really hope Brian's going to be on this for this one, because I know he's always got a very analytical mind when it comes to this stuff. So.
Yeah, let's let these guys ask some
I
questions.
am going to be quiet and let Keo and Brian ask some questions, and then we do have some from the chat.
You can go, Keo. What you got?
I was just more or less just kind of listening, taking everything in. I just wanted to say Phoenix is a really good area. If you guys didn't know, a lot of Fortune 500 companies and even other ones are moving to the Phoenix area. Off the top of my head, how far is Scottsdale from Phoenix?
From where we're at, it's about 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay, yeah, that's another prime real estate area. So that's a good location. I was a little disappointed it wasn't in Vegas, because years ago I had talked to some buddies of mine. I said, man, why doesn't Vegas have like a themed hotel, like for movies, like a Star Wars or Jurassic Park or a video game hotel? So it's an excellent idea was to have. And then I started reading more information about it, that it wasn't just Atari themed. It's you have it open to where you want to bring in additional IPs or additional type of video game thing. So it's a phenomenal idea. I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I will say Vegas is getting a music themed hotel. Hard Rock obviously is being built, but very different, of course. But no, I appreciate the kind words for sure.
Awesome.
So, Brian, do you have any specific questions or comments that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I have some comments because, like I said, I was just kind of staying quiet here, letting everyone, because again, I know that, a lot of people want to hear from the source, like everything with this, because to Mike's point, there's been a lot of things like this that have popped up that within the retro community that just, took money and ended up failing, and obviously, as it's already been mentioned in the show, this is just informational. We're not here telling you what to do, what to do with your money, to support this or anything. It's just get more information on it. And I think, like a lot of folks in the chat and listening here tonight, like, I think a lot of people love the idea. I think that it's just going to really come down to, the full execution of it. Cause just, listening, like the whole plan of stuff, I think it's just going to be, important. And I think you probably already know this, just kind of like what Mike mentioned with like the video stuff where, people with the AI and things. And again, you explained why. And it's just, I think, it's going to be more important than ever since this is somewhat retro game focused. I mean, also modern, but really in the retro is just just being transparent. If people are being kept up to date with stuff and full transparency of what's going on, I think you're going to get a lot more buy-in for it than just like what we saw. Again, it's an evil word, but like what we saw with the Amico, which again, this is a whole completely different thing, not even related, but obviously, people don't want to see things like that. And I also think what's going to be important, because again, I know just looking at the timeline, this is very early still. It's just, I think it's going to be important to try to nail down, because the question is going to be is like, why do I want to come to the Atari Hotel at the end of the day? Like when you hear 91 rooms, which, it's probably on par. 'Cause I think, if you do like Google searching, the average hotel size is about 100 rooms, give or take. So, I mean, I think you're within there. When you mentioned about the different event venue space with like the 2,200 people, again, I don't know. I mean, going to a lot of video game conventions, there's usually a lot more than 2,200 people there. So, when you say about wanting to have conventions there, things like that, I do question, is that size big enough? But again, that
not for most of them. Not for most of them. Yeah.
Right. So, I think it's just going to be trying to nail down what you really want to achieve there. That's going to keep the focus, because obviously someone sees the name Atari, I think people are going to expect a lot of Atari themed stuff, and that's just where, I think it's going to be important to nail down probably sooner than later, like what are the things you want to do in there? Because, I know you mentioned with, a big name YouTuber looking to do like a collab, and, and that's a good start, but I think it's going to be important to really nail down like what unique things to the Atari Hotel is going to be there to make anyone want to come out, make that as maybe a vacation spot for a week or two or whatever. That I think there just needs to be unique experiences, especially with a hotel being branded the way it is, in the sense of being Atari and looking at your promotional materials, things like that.
I appreciate that feedback a lot, and I totally agree. One of the big initiatives for us, and I can say this generically. I get in trouble if I said too much more at the moment, but there's too many ideas. There's several that we have really dialed in, that we are going to be sort of rolling out as, hey, this is an experience / concept that will exist as part of this. We have an amazing restaurant partner who's done a lot of these experiential type engagements that we're going to be announcing very soon, right? So totally agree. It's like, what is it? Oh, it's about gaming. It's like, okay, well, and what else, right? And so that is, for us, that's our responsibility as we continue forward here and bring more to the public purview of what we are working on, to add the right types of clarity around what those experiences will be, for sure.
But yeah, and like I said, then the more tangible stuff like that you can show, like I said, I think the more buy-in you'll get with folks. It's just and again, it's just because of other projects in the past, not specifically this one, obviously, but just with others. So I mean, the more transparency, the more true physical stuff you can show, I think will really help with things. So
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
I have a question about. I'm sorry. Did you want to say something, Keo? I've been talking a lot. Did you want to say something?
Okay. Yeah, I did. I just wanted to kind of get an idea, and I know I missed probably a few minutes of this earlier. What is the overall vision for the Atari Hotel? I mentioned. I heard you said about 91 rooms. So as far as the convention space, maybe the esports arena, how big is that going to be? What does the vision of that look like?
Yeah, so the hotel side, 91 keys, playoff of 1972. Obviously, the year Atari started, 19 suite, 72 standard rooms. Just to clarify that, I love that sort of Easter egg personally. I'm biased, of course, but um, from a venue perspective, it is truly a multi-purpose type venue, and so to the extent, and to your point earlier, Brian, about conventions, I mean, there's not the ability for us to host the larger gaming conventions, of course. Like I'm wearing a shirt from Portland Retro Gaming Expo that is one of the best shows in my opinion. We can't host that. I mean, that's a big show, and so we will be focused more on game specific type shows, certain product release type get-togethers, esports like actual competitions, etc. We can have 2,000 plus people in there, participating in that from an audience perspective. The music side of things is another area where in Phoenix, if you kind of peel back the onion as to what types of venues do the best from a music perspective in the Phoenix market, it's that 1,000 to 2,500 cap type venue. And so we're working closely with a partner on that. And then as you work up, beyond that first level, you're going to have, retail, food and beverage, immersive experiences with other brands, collaborations. And some of that we will be announcing. Some of it we will define. There's two specific concepts that I'm having the hardest time not telling you what they are right now because I'm so excited about them. That I think will help. I think they'd help. Sort of the general knowledge. Like, okay, like that makes sense. So those will be coming out soon. Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, this is not just a bunch of cool pictures on the wall with Atari 2600s in every room, right? It's much more than that, and embracing not only the physical experiences but the digital experiences, all those kind of things. So all that stuff is in the works. Some of it's very defined and will be coming out very soon. Other parts will continue to be defined and evolve as time goes on, right? But at the fundamental core of it, I mean, this is all about gaming culture, pop culture. I'm a big collector. I mean, that's another component to this I haven't spoken to. Like, if my kids are still watching, they're laughing because they know how bad this is. But I collect everything, right? I have comic books and toys and wrestling figures and video games and baseball cards and Pokemon. I mean, the list goes on, right? And so the collecting market is also a huge part, especially as you think about, some of the legacy of, the 70s and 80s type stuff that we'll lean into in part, right? So all of the above, right? Like a place like that we all want to go, have fun, multiple generations. We can do the old school stuff. We can do the new school stuff. Our kids have things to do. The 20-somethings think it's fun and entertaining because there's loud music and EDM and all the other stuff that goes into that, which I'm also a fan of, by the way. Like I don't want to, I have a lot of gray in my beard, but I'm still, a middle-aged guy. Thinks he's cooler than he is, right? As we all do for a period of time. But no, like I said, we're excited about where we're at. I mean, the real estate side of it is so, it's really just beyond exciting. I told a little bit of that story before, and a lot of these details about what these experiences are and what they'll be as we move forward here will become clearer and clearer.
So I gather from what you were saying that you actually might be instrumental in actually organizing small or medium-sized conventions of certain types there in Phoenix that will utilize the hotel. But my question is, I mean, obviously, I doubt anybody in the country has anything to the scale of the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. But most
Midwest Gaming
cities,
Classic is about the same size.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know, but I'm sure that there's going to be some larger ones there that obviously you couldn't accommodate everybody that might want to come in there. But I know for a fact that many and most gaming conventions actually offer rooms to their guests, people who, they have come in for the show. You have other conventions besides gaming, like you had mentioned comic books. There are board game conventions. Even in those conventions, you're going to have people who are going to like video games and may want to get a room. Do you foresee yourself working with local convention centers there in Phoenix to offer your hotel as something for these type of venues?
Yeah, I mean, the best example I can give there is I'm personally good friends with the gentleman who started what used to be called Phoenix Comic Con. It's now called Phoenix Fan Fusion. It's the largest remaining independently owned comic convention in the country. All the other ones have been rolled up underneath Reed Pop or Fan Expo or whatever. And so when you go to New York Comic Con or any of them now, they're probably owned by one of the big companies. Phoenix Fan Fusion is literally right down the street from us. They get close to 100,000 attendees a year. So there's no way for us to do really anything specific to that other than work with them collaboratively to not only offer rooms, which is sort of the clear low-hanging fruit there, but to also have supplemental and experiential uses during the convention when it's going on, right? And so you have all these people who put in a whole day doing all the things that they do, whether they're getting autographs or buying stuff or whatever it is, right? Meeting with the artist. We're going to have after parties. We're going to have different things like that that will be synergistic with some of the bigger conventions as well. And to the extent we can actually do our own things, like on a more boutique level, convention-y, we'll do some of that as well. But we view it sort of as a place for everybody, right? If we can collaborate with like the Phoenix Fan Fusions of the world and work with them on creating additional experiences for their guests, that's good for them. That's good for us. And as we think about like even the bigger brands as they're releasing new games, etc., our view is, hey, we have this amazing venue that has digital streaming capabilities. Come out, use it. It's free. Like come use our venue. The way we ultimately make money is people use the property, they buy food and beverage, they do those kind of things. But our ultimate goal with the venue is to really have it be a place where, like the Chinese theater in Hollywood is for movies in a lot of ways, right? Where ultimately a lot of things can happen out of that venue, not just physically, because it is limited in its capacity, but also can become a broadcasting capability for somebody that wants to do something on a VIP level in a physical setting, but then have a broadcasting component out to a much larger audience.
Speaking on a little bit of the technicalities when we were talking about broadcasting, can you speak of the network infrastructure that's going to be available to that hotel? Whether
you're asking the wrong guy about the technical infrastructure. So I'm going to say that is not a question that I'm comfortable answering. But no, all joking aside, well, we have technology partners. One of the ones we're already working with is Intel. That's out there in the purview. So we have the right team around us that are experts in that specific area and in those areas, because it's more than just one thing. To make sure that our infrastructure is built out in a way where we can actually do the things that we need to do, both in kind of the present, but also into the future.
The funny thing is that's actually the industry I work in. I work for Ross Video. We do the event space video boards and stuff for like NHL, MLB.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So
you should ask Mike that question, Keo. He did a better answer than I
did. Obviously, I don't have any drawings for your building. Unless there's any more from the panel here, we do have some chat questions.
I was just say, looking at about what time it is, it's probably good to hit the chat questions.
Okay, so, and not all of these are completely serious. Jeremiah Thomas, I want to know if we're getting a giant breakout like the National Video Game Museum has giant Pong.
Well, I will say one. Some people I'm sure know this, but for those that don't, one of the fun Atari history things that I love is Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak's involvement in Breakout. I think that's such a cool sort of historical fact that a lot of people don't necessarily know. Look, so we are going to be doing like one idea we've had, and this is something that's actually not terribly hard to execute, is to actually have a robot building an Atari 2600 in real time as you walk into the hotel lobby. So kind of thinking about like the old school meets the new school kind of mentality. There will also be plenty of sides of buildings, adjacent to us. Like one of the things we're going to do before we actually go vertical on the construction is we're actually going to have gaming capabilities on the side of one of our buildings adjacent to the site. And people are going to be able to come up and play on the side of the building. So stuff like that, certainly. But I love the question. I can't say we have a specific giant breakout plan at the moment, but I appreciate the question.
Yeah, okay. And then Crypto Coffee, and some of these we may have already covered, but reiterating doesn't hurt. With the Vegas hotel being ruled out, what is the funding gap currently, and when would you estimate enough would be made to officially lead to breaking ground?
Yeah, so just to reiterate some of that, so the Vegas project we were pursuing a handful of years back, we are no longer pursuing that specific project. However, Vegas may be in our future. We haven't completely ruled it out. We're still open to it, but we are heavily focused on Phoenix right now. This is our priority, and this is what we're spending our time, effort, and money on. As it relates to the funding side of things, so we have 14 plus already invested. The target raise of additional equity under this Reg A plus is at 40 million. That we touched on a little bit earlier as well. I will add the caveat to that we cannot and will not access capital from the Regulation A offering until we hit $8.668 million. That's technically the exact number. That money will then be used for that Reg A entity to acquire the majority interest of the development site, the Atari license for the project, etc. And that's when we'll start to move forward in development. But we won't go to the full vertical development until we've raised the full 40 million that we're currently out seeking.
Okay. And I'll rephrase this one. He says it sounds ambitious. Where is he getting the money for all that? Is this current fundraising, is this your only source of funds, or do you, like you mentioned, you've got partnerships in Phoenix? I imagine there's probably some tourist generating government funds available for something like this. Are there more avenues than just go onto the site and do your $500 and hope you get enough people to get 40 million? Or
yeah, and I think this ties back to what we talked a little bit about before, right? Where we've done over $350 million worth of projects that we've raised capital on, private investment, family office, type money historically, and so the amount that's been invested to this point has been through a portion of that network, that 14 plus million that we've already put into the development. And so we are actively working privately with other family offices, with other investors, in complement or in supplement with the Reg A being live. And so it is not the only source of capital for us, and we'll continue to work on those additional angles and avenues, on a parallel path.
Will there be themed floors and or rooms? Being a gaming themed hotel, there will be plenty of gaming options available inside the rooms. I think.
Yeah. So the short answer, the short answer to this is yes, right? I mean, we'll not only have Atari related, rooms that you would expect given the brand that we're licensed, that we've licensed, but we'll also be collaborating with other brands, other influencers, other content creators, etc., to do specific experiences in several of the rooms. I will also mention there will be a fully functional video store in the building that you can actually rent, VHS players, Super Nintendos, Ataris, Sega Genesis. You can rent all the games, just like we did back in the day when we went to Family Video or Blockbuster Hollywood Video, right? And so there'll be stuff like that where there'll be certain things that will be inherent to all of the rooms. But like you can walk in and be like, hey, I want to play Mario 3 on the original Nintendo. I'm gonna go rent my Nintendo and my Mario 3. I'm gonna go play it, in my room for whatever, right? So, so all of those types of experiences will be available.
All right, Cannabis Kid asked something that I think is covered by most government regulations for new constructed buildings. But what about special needs wheelchair and accessibility options?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a great question, and the city of Phoenix does have a very specific set of criteria for any project, not just this, for accessibility to ensure that anybody that has that type of a need has the ability to access every component of the property. So our property will be no different. Even if we said, hey, we didn't want to do that, which obviously we would, but the city of Phoenix does require that.
Crypto Coffee asks, are there any contingency plans for unforeseen risks and or lack of hitting the financial goal with this fundraiser?
Yeah, so the main contingency, as I spoke to, is that we won't access the funds until the Regulation A group becomes the majority owner of the actual physical real estate itself. And so if we don't hit that goal, then ultimately the funds will sit in escrow. That's all part of the SEC filing and offering that we had to go through, and that money will then be returned to the investors.
Okay.
And that 124 million, that has, like, please God, that has built-in contingency, because every single building project I have ever been privy to has gone way over budget.
Oh, well, so we typically build in. It's a great comment. I mean, we typically build in on. I'll call it a regular project because this is not a regular project in most contexts. We will typically build in a 8 to 10% contingency based on unforeseen delays, cost overruns, all the stuff that you experience. I mentioned the project where you had shown before, where there was an empty lot. You could see the elevator shaft going up, and I said, "Oh, we just got certificate of occupancy on that project today." Well, that project took several months longer to actually get that certificate than we had originally planned, right? So that stuff happens. Ultimately, in this project, we have about almost 30% contingency baked in right now. So it's going to be our goal as we get further into development, design, all the things that we're working on. It's actually our goal to bring that $124 million number down, right? Because that has a pretty heavy baked in, sort of just there's some unknowns still here, right? And so, but it's very, very heavy contingency baked in at the moment.
All right. This is a member of the fan club, Noah Lynn. Says, can Stray Kids collaborate with Atari Hotels, please, Mr. Jordan? It would be so sick.
That I will be full disclosure. That is my oldest daughter, and so she already knows my answer to the question. So thank you, Noah.
All right. Megantron YT says, will there be souvenir gift shops that will focus on retro? Sounds like you've already said yes.
100%. I mean, I am also the proud owner of a sports card TCG collectible shop right down the street from this property, and so I know that business really well. And we will have all sorts of collectibles, pop-ups with exclusives, different brands we'll partner with, but a lot of the old school stuff too. Like I have graded Atari video games from the 70s that are still sealed with high grades, and I don't know if you guys follow like the WATA world with grading video games, but all of the above. So yeah, totally into all that stuff. There'll be sort of your basic stuff all the way to higher end collectibles as well.
All right. And she says, and I think you've answered this one too. And if I missed it, I'm sorry, but will there be a way to have the gameplay experience in your room as well?
Yeah, not only in a static sense of being able to play games in your room, but we'll also have the ability for sort of an in-network gaming sort of experience as well, where you can game against other people on the property and that kind of stuff with leaderboards and all that kind of stuff. We'll have constantly things going on like that. So, or if you just want to play in your room on an old school Nintendo or an Atari, that's great too.
That sounds fun.
Crypto Coffee says Blade Runner themes too.
Totally.
Probably loosely if you're going with the dystopian future.
I was asked by our architecture team early on in this process, so I have to take the blame for this. For those who don't like it, it's my fault. What would be like your vision of like the design inspiration for this property? I'm like, just Blade Runner, that's it.
Blade Runner, I think would get depressing after a couple days.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Dystopian for sure.
Mix in some of the fantasy Retro Player One or Ready Player One stuff.
Yeah,
true.
Atari 1212 says, will you showcase retro computers, Atari 8-bit, Mac, Amiga, PCs?
Yeah, the goal for us is to have really gaming of every generation and every level. So 100%.
All right. And then Keo, it's a starred comment here says, Keo has one more question. Take it away, Keo.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I'm not sure if you already mentioned this. Can you speak on the aesthetics of the actual hotel, like the type of sink, countertops, the quality of the beds, quality of the linen? I know we're talking a lot about video games in a hotel. but it is a hotel. So is it? I'm just using this as an example. Motel 6 quality, or are we talking about like a Aries or a Hilton type vibe? You know, just trying to get a feel for, hey, when I lay my head down, I'm at a, you know, I feel like I'm in a Royal Caribbean icon of the seas.
Well,
Have
you've
you
seen
been
the
in
bench.
both? Have you been
You've
in a
seen-
Royal Caribbean and a Motel 6?
Yes, I have.
You've seen the beds in Tron. It's just a bench.
Yeah, that's living living the simple life. No, so the analogy I would give to that question is, you know, in the hotel world, you have sort of a star rating, right? You have your 1-star hotel up to your 5-star hotel. I don't want to insult Motel 6 again, but it seems like the theme. So maybe they're a 1-star, and then, you know, you have your Four Seasons and, you know, those kind of things kind of on the higher end. We will be right around that 4-star range. So this is not a luxury property, but it is going to be nice, right? It's going to be done well. And certainly will not be cheap in any capacity, both from an physical experience and a technology perspective. And so I would say right in that 4-star range is where we'll be.
Okay.
Fair question.
It's funny. You can really see where people's heads are. There's the people that are asking about the hotel, and that I would say that Keo and Phil fall into that. And then there's the people who's asking like, okay, how are we going to get to that? I don't really care so much yet what that is. It's the bridge, and that I think that's me and Brian right now. But that's all the questions from the chat that I have here. I think that I've really appreciated hearing from you. I know everybody here probably feels the same way. I do feel a little bit different about the project than I did when I first heard it, and that's a positive thing because let's be honest, when I first heard it, it was not a positive reaction from me, and probably from a lot of retro people, retro folks. As always, I do want to reiterate that nothing said, like, if you're gonna anybody investing in anything, talk to a financial advisor. Please go through the documentation. Hopefully, like Brian said, hopefully there'll be more tangible stuff available publicly, or at least easily available publicly on your website soon. I think that would help ease a lot of the concerns that have been found. But I've really appreciated hearing you talk and being candid about the project. So thank you very much for being on.
Well, thank you guys for having me. It was super fun to chat through this, and I'm glad it worked out. I love doing this, and really appreciate the questions and the conversation. And the future is bright, and we appreciate everybody listening in as well.
I think the fact that Keo and I were asking, what is it? And Brian and Mike saying, how you getting there? We had a lot of variety of questions tonight, and I think a lot of them have been answered adequately for people at least who are curious about this project to see, you know, what it is, how you, like you say, what it is, how you get there. So hopefully we were able to help provide some information. Again, we don't say to do it or not to do it. We're just saying, hey, here it is. And we had Jordan come in, not Jordan Love, but Jordan Taylor. Sorry about that, man. I feel so bad about that. I don't know why I had Jordan Love on my mind anyway.
I'm sure he doesn't mind. He's going to be walking around his entire business. I'm Jordan Love.
That's right.
Best compliment I've ever received. An accidental one. It was great.
Well, Jordan, I want to extend an invitation to come back when this happens. We want you back on the show to talk about how you got there and how it's going. And I would love, if I'm in that area or if I have a reason to go there to visit, for sure. I mean, that's definitely something that it appeals to me from what I'm hearing. So again, Mike, Brian, Keo, Jordan, all you guys, thank you for being part of the show tonight. I think it was very informative, and thank you for everybody who has been watching it. We went a little over tonight, more so than normal, but again, good show. And we're going to be back with Jordan at some point, and we don't know when. Hopefully, you expect this to be done in like 2028, I think I saw.
Yeah, end of 2028. Yep.
Okay, all right. Very
We can
good,
talk
very
before that.
good.
We don't have to wait
Oh,
3
yeah.
years, guys. I mean, come on.
All right. Well, if there's contact either Mike or I, and if you want to talk about something, let us know. Let us know if it's prior
Sounds
to
great.
it opening. So let me get things ready here because I have been known to screw up endings. But anyway, you guys have an awesome day, and we will see you next time on Retro Bliss Rewind.